Boys are back in town.
The
Back in.
boys are back in town.
I
Sorry,
knew.
did I
I was
just get you
hoping you would do that.
demonetized?
I was hoping you'd do that. Yeah. So
I played that song at a wedding one time.
really,
As the bride and groom entered, well, it was actually post-wedding. It was at the what do you call that? The
Re-
after
the
wedding
reception.
reception.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was the music for the reception, and as the bride and groom entered, I did a slow ballad
Oh.
version of The Boys Are Back in Town. They loved it.
Oh,
They
I would
still
pay to
talk
hear
about
that,
it.
man.
They still talk about it. Look who just got back in town today.
Simon, you're both the life of the party and the strange guy at the party at the same time.
I hate parties and I hate group gatherings. Not that I hate them, I just I get so drained by them.
Yeah.
And so I will actually have and Shannon has had to learn to live with this. I have actually like gotten sick just thinking about going to an event, and it's made me sick, and I haven't been able to go to certain things. It's
Wow.
anyway, it's like
Simon.
I know but Shannon's like, but when you're there, you're like the life of the party
Yeah.
or whatever. It's
Yeah.
like, well, I'm putting on a good show, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Are you mother in this scenario? Like
Oh man, that's the $1 million question. Who is mother?
it's true. I am mother. That's the movie today to discuss. Pretty good stuff,
Yeah,
man. Lots of themes
man.
here.
To me, this movie um, wraps up like all the stuff I love about sci-fi. Um, it's suspenseful, it's chilling, it's got really strong themes that sci-fi serves really well, you know. Okay, so what's the problem with a lot of just junk sci-fi? Is that there's nothing we care about. It's just not intelligent. Let's just put it that
Sure.
way.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this just the other day in the shower. Picture that.
Okay, let's get a picture. Simon's in the shower.
Simon's in the
His hair
shower.
is flowing.
Yeah,
The
the
water
water
beating
is
down.
dripping down. Yep, yeah.
Yeah, okay. We'll put an explicit rating on this. It's
Yeah.
fine.
My, my extremely pale skin is turning red in the hot water,
Just
the
scalding.
whole thing. Yep. So, but I was thinking about how certain sci-fi improves upon the original, such as in my opinion, Star Trek Next Generation is a huge improvement upon the original Star Trek. And we can argue all day about, oh, do you like those characters better than these characters or what have you, Kirk versus Picard, all those kind of nerdy
Yeah.
things. But when it comes to it, storytelling, Next Generation, one of the greatest sci-fi series of all time, if not the greatest, in my opinion, just on the strength of its storytelling. So, why did the latest reboots of Star Trek, why do they all suck? Because they're all trying to be action franchises
They are.
and they're not telling interesting stories.
Yeah. They're trying to be
There's
Fast and
nothing
Furious.
interesting.
That's what they're
Yeah,
trying to
there's
be. In space.
yeah, there's just nothing interesting about the stories being told. Did they make three in the last like
Yeah, I watched them all,
reboot
honestly.
series?
It's just bad, honestly.
I did watch them all, and
Mm.
like I think most people, I was initially fooled by the first one.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was. I was initially fooled by it. There was lots of light flares,
Yeah,
you
light
know,
flares.
and it was very exciting. And we saw Kirk is very young, and all
Right.
these kind of things.
Yeah.
And then and watching it, as just a pure popcorn movie, fine,
Yeah.
totally fine. I actually don't have a real problem with that first reboot Star Trek movie as just a purely popcorn sci-fi movie. But
Yeah.
when you try to say is it telling a compelling story in the tradition of the Star Trek universe?
Yeah.
No,
No, no, no,
absolutely not.
no,
No, no. The
no.
big fat negative. And I think J.J. Abrams, to his credit and to his demise, in my mind, is really good at that. He's
Yeah.
really good at, it's like you feel like you've been set up for something exciting, and then you realize, oh, actually, that was just kind of dumb.
Yeah. Yeah. Most definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just like, oh man, that felt really exciting, like for a brief moment, and then I sat back in my chair and I was like, oh, that was really dumb,
That was
actually.
bad. Yeah. Exactly. Right. And then they kind of do that too. It's like you're like, oh, you're getting Chris Pine as Captain Kirk. You know, you're
You
getting
can't
Zoe
argue with the
Saldana,
cast. Yeah,
right? You're
you can't
getting
argue
like,
with that
let's just be
cast.
honest, it's a way more attractive cast than the original guy. Like they put you the candy in there. They put a lot of candy in there. And
Yeah,
you're like,
yeah,
wow,
yeah.
like, okay. Like this
Well,
is, it's part of marketing.
and yeah, and they put in actors that frankly can give us, at least close to an Oscar-worthy
Right.
performance over Spilled Milk.
Zachary
So once
Quinto, Carl
again,
Urban, you know, like
yeah.
yeah.
So once again, you're kind of fooled by the strength of the actors
Yes.
and the great job that they're doing. And then you kind of forget that, oh, what I'm watching is really stupid. Actually, it's really dumb. Um, I don't know how many other directors working today rely more on contrivance and convenience than
Yeah.
J.J. Abrams.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's just sometimes it's just like the laziest writing I can
He's-
possibly think of. I mean, let me just, not to pick on it, and we won't dwell on it, but just to say the difference between good sci-fi and bad sci-fi. Okay, I Am Mother. Can you think of anything in that movie that after you watched it, you sat back and thought about it, felt contrived or a matter of pure chance or convenience?
no,
No, everything,
no,
it's like you might even be accusing the movie of something like that as you're watching it. But
right.
then once you've watched the movie all the way through and you realize, and I don't want to give too many spoilers, I want people to go watch it. But once you realize what has really gone on, you're just like, oh,
Yeah.
this is actually, and I felt like this the whole way, honestly. I felt like this is one of the most intelligent scripts
Yeah.
I've watched in a while, at least.
Right.
And then compare that to James Kirk being thrown off of his ship. Spock, I think, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly, so they put him in some like pod and they threw him on some ice planet.
Yeah.
And it just so happens to be where Spock,
Just so happens
the
to be.
old
Yeah.
Spock, is.
That's
And
right.
when, and on this entire, okay, so we're talking about a series that spans galaxies, right? So
Exactly.
Spock could literally be anywhere in multiple galaxies,
Yes. Yeah. The odds are extreme low. Like,
and then on just the planet, what are the odds that Kirk lands and then goes to a cave
I know.
where Spock? I mean, it's like you're watching it and you're kind of wrapped up in the excitement of it, and then you sit back and you're just like, man, that was really stupid.
Yeah. Well, they don't
It
want
was
you to
really
question it
stupid and
during the
lazy.
time you're watching it. They're like, I have you here now. So like,
Pacing keeps you from questioning
pacing.
too much
Yes.
because it's just boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Once again, compare that to the movies made with the original cast of Star Trek. Very few scenes of anybody running anywhere. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
I do. Yeah.
It's because those movies are about grown-ups making grown-up decisions.
Yeah, for sure.
And this reboot series is about children acting like children. I mean, seriously, that's what it
Yeah, no, it's
is.
true. It's
It
true.
feels like teenagers acting like who've been put in charge of a starship.
Yeah, that's right.
and,
And there's
and
lots
I
of sexual overtones. Everybody's very horny.
yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, okay, okay.
Yeah.
They're like, we're gonna make Spock really like a love machine, man. And this he's really
Yeah,
into it, man.
man. I tell you, these reboot series, whether you're talking about Star Trek,
They're the
Star Wars, or
worst.
whatever,
Like
they just
they're garbage.
they just do those characters dirty.
Yeah.
And I don't even mean with like sexually. I
Yeah.
just mean they just stab those characters in the
I
back.
agreed. Agreed.
It's like
Yeah.
they're trying to say it's a new take on the character or
There's
whatever.
no
It's like
way, man.
it's a betrayal. It's not
It's a
it's not a new
betrayal.
take. It's a betrayal of the character.
Totally
You know,
agree. I was literally
it's
just saying this to Michelle the other day. I was like, I don't like any reboots. I don't. I'm trying to think what reboot I liked of anything. I'm like, it's not there for me. I don't know. It's not
mm-mm.
like I'm trying to not like it. Let me just be clear. I'm not trying to not like it. It's just when I see it, I'm just like, what is this? Like, shouldn't the reboot feel good? Like, be like a nostalgic thing? None of that exists. None of that.
If you just go to Star Wars and whether you're talking about the
Oh no.
prequels or the sequels, I won't go on a long tangent.
Here it
I'm
comes.
just making a statement that I can't imagine anybody on planet Earth who wanted to like those movies more.
Right.
And because of how much I wanted to love those movies, there's probably nobody who was more disappointed
Yeah. Yeah.
with those movies than I was. I
Yeah.
mean, just because it just, like we said, it just felt like it didn't feel like an expansion of the original characters in the original universe.
Yeah.
It just felt like a betrayal of those
Yeah.
things.
Agreed.
And when you're watching those things and you know, it's just like I I just don't understand where those things go so wrong. Well, I do, and that's why I want to bring it up
Right.
because it's always in the writing.
Of course it is.
And so you have to start from a good script to begin with. And that's where I Am Mother is just leaps and bounds ahead of most sci-fi.
Yeah.
Because from the get-go, it started with a good script. And I'm not
Yeah.
talking about a good premise. People mistake that all the time.
Right. Right.
They mistake a good script for a good premise. It's like, wasn't that an interesting premise? It's like, yeah, but they didn't do anything with it.
Right. Exactly. There's plenty of good premise like based movies. Like you read it and you're like, wow, this should be really good. And then
Yeah.
you watch, you're like, this is horrible. Like did not live up to what they said it was going to be. Yeah.
Yeah. Or there's a lot of movies where if you were to just describe the premise to somebody, it wouldn't sound very interesting.
Yeah.
But the execution and the script writing and everything made it
Yeah.
interesting. So, you know, if I were to give a one sentence preview for somebody of I Am Mother, I would say, you know, it is about um, an android who is raising a young girl to someday repopulate planet Earth. Some people might find that premise really intriguing. Other people might say that doesn't sound interesting
Yeah.
at all, you know. And 99% of the movie occurs within
Mm-hmm.
like 2 rooms and a
Right. This
hallway.
compound. Yeah. They're
Yeah.
in. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it'd be
But
like,
still
well,
very
that
interesting.
doesn't
Yeah.
sound very interesting. Some people might say that doesn't sound very
Yeah.
interesting. You know, another movie that I would compare to this one was the Cloverfield
Oh yeah.
movie with
Yeah.
John Goodman, where they're
Yes.
in
When
the
they were down in the
bunker.
bunker. Yeah. Yeah.
Once again, actually very similar to this one these respects. You got 3 characters. Throughout the entire film, you're kind of wondering what's really going on.
Yeah.
And if the good guy's a good guy, if the bad guy's a bad guy, if there's somewhere
Yeah.
in between, you know. And you know, like that Cloverfield movie, John Goodman he does some bad
Man.
stuff.
Yeah. He
He
does
does
some
some
bad
bad
stuff.
stuff.
Yeah. He does some bad stuff.
But you could make an argument that he's a good person who's just been driven crazy,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
out of fear of what's going on outside,
Yeah.
you know. And so is he a villain? Maybe yeah, he's the villain of the movie, but does he have horrific intentions? Maybe not. Maybe he's just trying to keep people say, you know, I just
Yeah,
think
of course.
it's a you can have a debate about it.
You can have a debate. Yeah. And most of it takes place inside, like you said, but there is a point where, like in both movies, there you get outside
Yeah.
and then you start learning some things.
Yeah, you
When's that
finally get
happen? Yeah.
outside, and unfortunately for me anyway, that's where that Cloverfield movie fell
Because it got
apart
fun.
for
It was
me.
weird at that point. It's like,
Yeah,
if you
it's
haven't
like,
watched it, it's
well,
just, it's like,
I didn't need a 30-foot
like the
monster
big
at the
thing. Yeah,
end. Yeah,
exactly.
I didn't need that.
It picks it up and it's like,
You know, I could have done without that scene completely. The very, very end where she sees the fighting going on in the
yeah,
distance and she decides to join the fighting. I think, if I remember
yeah.
correctly, she drives toward the fighting. Skip the big monster
Skip the
fight
monster.
and
Yeah.
just go right to that. I would have been totally happy
Yeah. Same.
with
Same.
that ending, you
Yeah.
know. Um, but you know, it Cloverfield, so they had to throw a big
Of
monster in,
course.
you
Yeah.
know.
Most
I
definitely. Yeah.
actually have never seen uh I think there's two other
I
Cloverfield.
didn't see the other one. No, I didn't. I
I
stopped
haven't
going
seen it.
past that. I was like, I'm done here.
Yeah,
It's like,
I didn't see the original one with
I
that was
saw the
all
original one. Yeah.
I never saw that one. Um, I'll be honest with you, I only watched that one because John Goodman.
Yeah.
I
I'm a
was
big
like,
John Goodman guy.
John Goodman, maybe, you know, when I watched the preview, I was like, John Goodman kind of going crazy in a bunker. That
Yeah.
sounds good.
Yeah.
That sounds
Yeah.
good.
He's an excellent actor. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's a national treasure.
Hmm.
I mean, name a movie where putting John Goodman in it won't make it better,
It's
you
just
know?
awesome, man.
Yeah. and he's played so many different kinds of roles. He's been the villain, he's been the good guy, he's been, you know, kind, he's been mean, he's, you know, he's just one of those characters who can do it all.
Yes.
He can do it all.
Yeah.
And I just really love that about him, you
Yeah.
know.
I like the
And
versatility.
he has done it all. He has done it, and I appreciate that about him. And he's done it as like a 300-pound, 6 foot four
Yeah.
guy or something like that, which is not easy to do. It's
No.
not easy to get cast consistently in big, important roles.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you
Yeah.
get like a little role here or there, you know, but he's somebody that, you know, Hollywood actually took seriously, you know, which I
Yeah.
really appreciate about him because
Yeah.
it would have been easy for his career to have begun and ended with the Roseanne Barr
Of
show, you know,
course.
the
Of
TV
course.
show. But he's gone on to just do amazing
He's just an
stuff.
incredible actor. I appreciate everything he does. And a big shout out, John Goodman. He looked like he lost a lot of weight because I saw him in a series, I think Monarch on Apple TV. And I was like, whoa, like,
Yeah.
wow,
I've been
lost a
meaning to
lot of
check
weight,
that
man.
series out,
I
mainly
stopped
because
watching
of
it, man. I had to stop watching.
oh, did you?
It
Was
it
it
was
not
boring
good?
to me. It was just
Yeah.
boring. Like, I don't know.
You know, when they start to make a series out of something like that, I'm like, I start to question, it's like, do you really have enough good ideas to create a series?
Yeah.
Or are you just dragging something out that should have been just
It's
a
just a
feature
movie.
film?
Yeah.
Yeah, it should have been a 2 hour movie, and but you stretch it out to 8 or 12 hours, and you
A lot of
know,
wasted time, honestly. Just
and
almost
budget,
like budget.
and
Yeah.
budget.
And you know, as things I know, like I like you, I like dialogue. I enjoy blowing up stuff too, but I don't like when there's a lot of dialogue and it just doesn't mean anything to me. It's just boring. I'm just like, just get. I don't want this.
Dialogue's only good when it's interesting and
Yeah.
when it's propelling the characters
Yes.
forward in their journey. That's when dialogue is
Yeah.
interesting. If it's just people, I mean, if you go back to, I'm using these examples because they're really obvious.
Yeah.
Okay, the J.J. Abrams mystery box or whatever.
Yeah.
You know his
I
whole
know.
thing with
Yeah.
that, where it's like, and it's the biggest. Pardon my French, but it's the biggest bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
To
Sure.
me, the J.J. Abrams mystery box means I don't actually know where I'm going, and I don't know how to actually do any of this.
Yeah.
So instead, I'm just going to leave everybody wishing that I had done something, but I didn't. You know?
Yeah. Of course.
I mean, and I can't blame everything on J.J. Abrams, but like that first Star Wars movie that he directed, he set up a lot of stuff that never went anywhere.
Sure. Yeah.
It never, and honestly, it was like there was no plan for it to go anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, if there had been a plan, it would have gone somewhere, but there was no plan, so it didn't go anywhere. And that's when it's like, why did you even do a trilogy?
Yeah.
Just make one really good movie.
Right.
I Am Mother. I never want to see an I Am Mother part two. I don't want to see an I Am Mother prequel. I don't want any of that shit. The movie I Am Mother, to me, is a nearly perfect movie, and it needs no prequel, no sequel.
I totally agree. And like I said, like earlier, there's a lot of themes in there. I know you had sent something to me on text and kind of with those four boxes. And I always thought too,
Yeah,
like watching that movie is one of the things I like sci-fi so much. I'm a big sci-fi fan just because I believe that there's a lot of room for exploring some really deep and complex themes about being alive and
yeah,
exploration and what does it mean to be human, what does it mean to create things, almost this kind of deity like behavior. What does it
yeah,
mean to explore unknown places and things? And so I think in many ways it encompasses some of those themes, and the themes, even just the theme of a robot, an AI raising a human child. How does it know? Like, what
yeah.
would be the best way to raise a child?
It says one of the most interesting lines of the whole movie because when you think about the movie as a whole and how the line references multiple characters in multiple ways, when the android mother says it the girl that she's raising has asked why she doesn't have any siblings,
Yeah,
and the mother's response was, it takes a long time to learn how to be a good mother.
yeah.
And as the movie unfolds and when it ends, you realize how many layers of meaning
Right.
that one statement had. And it was just like, wow. I mean, that's what good storytelling does.
Yeah.
Where it's like in most movies, that line might not have meant much or
Right.
anything. It might, but in a really great script like I Am Mother, it has layers of meaning that you could sit around talking about for hours.
Yeah. Most definitely.
Even the title, and that's what I love about sci-fi too.
Yeah.
It's like we can sit here and talk about I Am Mother, and because we have three characters in the movie,
Yeah.
and all three of those characters at certain points throughout the film can say I am mother, or they can say they are trying to inhabit that
Yeah.
role.
Right.
And it's just brilliant.
It is brilliant.
It's just brilliant. Those are the things I really, really appreciate. I watched somebody do the movie Fury, the tank
Yeah.
movie with
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Brad Pitt.
great,
Yeah.
yeah, great movie.
Love that movie.
Anyway, there was a film critic who was just talking about how one of the ways that that movie succeeds where so many other movies fail is that it doesn't leave the premise, and it always makes the premise interesting. And the premise is the tank. That doesn't sound interesting to
I
me. Back to
know.
what we were saying
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
Okay, guys spending the entire movie in a Sherman tank. I'm sorry, that doesn't sound that interesting to me. But you go watch that movie
Mm.
and you see how
Great
great filmmaking is
filmmaking.
done
Yes. Yes.
in keeping to that one premise, the tank. And you learn so many things about the tank. You learn its strengths and weaknesses. You
Yep.
learn its, how the enemy combatants can, are some of them are useless against the tank. Others can be they can take it down really easily,
Yeah.
So, I mean, all this stuff. super, super interesting stuff. And I Am Mother succeeds in that as well, where throughout the twists and turns of the movie, it never forgets its premise, which is it right there in the title.
Yep.
I
I
Am
am
Mother.
mother. Yep.
Yeah. And so anyway, just I'm trying not to gush too much about this movie because I
Yeah.
really want to just overly praise this movie,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not overly praising, but I don't want people to go out and watch it and be like, I don't know why he was so excited about it. You know what I
We're used to
mean?
Simon bagging movies, all right? It was like
I bag on most movies because they're not as good as I Am Mother.
well, let me ask you this. So a lot of movies, and I've seen a lot of them, basically tell the story of some version of apocalypse, AI based apocalypse, and
Yep.
this dystopian future, things of that nature. What makes this different to you than those other movies that kind of center around those themes?
For me, a lot of sci-fi tries to incorporate some kind of biblical creationist
Mm.
references and things like that.
Mm.
I Am Mother succeeds in its subtlety in doing that. I mean, if you really break down I Am Mother, you could do a really solid breakdown of comparing I Am Mother to Genesis.
Mm.
And especially the first couple, like two or
Yeah.
three chapters of Genesis. You have I'll just point out a couple of them that are fairly obvious and won't be such big spoilers. But you have a sentient AI who is learning how to care for humans. That's like the first couple chapters of
It
Genesis.
literally is. Yeah.
You have a sentient being who
Right.
is learning how to care for humans. You have humans who are um, quite satisfied, or seemingly quite
Right.
satisfied in their existence, except that they haven't expanded the family. That's the only thing that's missing in both of these stories.
Yeah.
And then you have another character who comes in, and in one story you have the snake who's saying, hey, take of the apple, and in
Yeah.
this story you have Hilary Swank's character come in
Yeah.
and does a real number on the reality
Mm-hmm.
of our main protagonist. And this is a huge spoiler, and I'm sorry if people plug your ears for the next 10 seconds if you don't want to hear this spoiler. But in both stories, in Genesis and in I Am Mother, the snake and Hilary Swank's character are both put in place by the omnipotent being,
Mm-hmm.
the omnipresent being, and they have a very specific purpose for being placed in the garden.
Right.
Now, depending on what sect of Christianity or Judaism or whatever, you have different ideas of, is the snake good, bad? Is it Satan? Is it not Satan? Blah, 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 blah. Was it a snake that used to have legs, or,
Yeah. Yeah. Of
yeah,
course.
well,
Yeah.
you know, so there's a lot of ways to interpret these things, but my art, and it was so funny because I was just writing about this, and then I watched I Am Mother, and I was just like, man, this actually is a really great example of the thing I was writing about, which was that if you want to say that the snake was evil or a representation of temptation or
Temptation.
sin or
Yeah.
evil, of all these things, God put the snake in there, so God wanted it there. If God didn't want the snake there, it wouldn't have been there.
Right.
I mean, if you're talking about an all-powerful, perfect being who created everything, then the snake is there because God wanted it to be there.
Yeah.
So, in other words, what I'm saying is that God wants mischief.
Mm.
He wants there to be If you want to call it evil, I think evil is a way too simplistic term.
Mm,
What I would rather say is that God wants complexity.
mm. I like that. Yeah.
And too often, in my opinion, what various religions or sects of religions are trying to do is steal away from the complexity that God wants in our lives.
Most definitely. And this is always fought against, I think, in many different sects of religion. Is like, no, there can't be a lot of nuance to this.
Yeah,
No, we're not doing that. This is black and white. This is what
either
it is.
or.
Either
Yeah,
or, yeah. There's no middle ground on this. you know.
yeah. So I love that. I love that we learn that Hilary Swank's character is there because the robot wants her there.
Mm-hmm.
She has a
Yep.
very specific use, and she is trying to. And man, like I say, this more spoilers, but it just has to be
Okay.
said because it's just so interesting that, when the mother says it takes, or when the android says it takes a long time to learn how to be a mother, she wasn't talking about herself. She was talking about raising the girl to
Right.
be a mother, and that
Right.
was her intent from the get-go. Is the robot evil? Is it the antagonist? Only in as much as God is the antagonist when he floods the earth in the story of
Right.
Noah. So, you know, this is why this movie is so great. I mean, yeah, I think a lot of people could watch this movie and not clue into any of that stuff
Oh
that
yeah,
we're
for
talking about right
sure.
now. You
Most
could just
definitely.
watch it and you're just not, thinking
Yeah,
about it, and because the movie is so good just on its own without any of these
for sure.
classical references and
Yeah.
stuff like that. You don't need to be comparing it to the Bible or
Right.
anything like that for this movie to just be great.
Yeah.
It's great on its own. But once you start drawing in those comparisons, all of a sudden you're just like, man, every character, and there's only three, but all
Exactly.
three of those characters become so much more complex and so much more interesting because you're seeing it's like what the themes, like you were saying, the many complex themes that this movie
Yeah.
is playing with, but it's not in your face. It never preaches at you.
No.
That nobody has a long soliloquy about this, like how this is wrong or this is right or anything like that. No, it's just everybody feels real. Isn't it weird to talk about an android feeling real?
I think that's kind of the fear and excitement of
Yeah,
creation is the realness of how the creator feels about the thing it creates and the nuanced feeling of what that would be like. I mean, think about and when you're a parent, in many ways you have that same feeling. You're like,
yeah.
what are you? like, what?
We repeat this thing all the time. One of my kids, was it Sonny, or it was either Sonny or Adriana. One of them, I think, they just looked up at somebody at one point when they were first learning how to talk as toddlers and stuff like that. They were
Yeah.
putting their sentences together, and they looked up at somebody and said, "What you are." And I just love that. And so I say that all the time. I look at one of my kids, especially when they've done something really stupid, like,
yeah.
"What you are."
yeah. It's kind of like, people, this is sci-fi too. It's like I've said this to a lot of people. I said, we want to think of like what would it be like to make first contact with alien civilization.
Yeah,
In a sense, like a sentient robot would be a very similar idea. I said, but you really don't have to wait for that. If you're a parent, you have had first contact because your child is an alien. It has no bearing of what this planet is like, what this reality is, and everything
that's
they
really good.
experience is literally like they come from another planet. I mean, if you really think about it,
That's good.
you have experienced first contact, and it's frustrating and amazing at the same time.
I don't think I invented this idea, but I can't trace it to any one source. But I was thinking about this very recently, how take your atheist scientist and
Mhm.
your non-science believing religious person,
Sure.
just to have two extremes. Well, they have something in common. Both of them believe that the actual reality of what's going on is unseen.
Yeah.
So everything that's actually happening in ourselves, we don't see any of it.
Yeah.
We don't see any of it. And so whether you believe that's a spiritual thing or whether you just believe in biology and these are
Right.
all biological processes and things like that, uh, ultimately it's the same. That the reality of our universe is completely unseen by us, but we think we see it, but we don't.
It's so true.
I compare it to if you stand on the beach and you look out on the ocean, you see a lot of ocean,
You
but
do.
you've really seen none of it.
Right. Yeah. It's like the iceberg. You see the tip of the iceberg, but there's so much underneath it that you
Yeah.
don't experience. And I think with like these, like if you think about androids, humans, and some people may look, it was like, may think of the theme, well, how could a sentient robot know how to raise a human being? We're like, well, there's a lot of human beings who don't know how to raise a human being. like, like, what's the difference? You're all receiving information.
Yeah.
And if you receive enough information over a long period of time, you start developing ideas about what should and should not be done. That's what a baby does. Over time and grows up, you feed it information. It starts thinking on its own. Doesn't this sound like a robot? like, and then it starts making decisions based off of the data you fed it or it has been fed throughout its existence
Yeah.
for that. It's
Remember
kind of,
Short
it's
Circuit?
right. Yeah.
Need more
Meltdown.
data.
I'm so hungry.
Yeah.
like, why are you always hungry all the time? Come on. It's like, geez, man. like,
You know, in Short Circuit, Johnny number five, he
yeah,
only
he's
had
alive.
something like 512 megabytes of CPU.
it's so great, right?
But back then that sounded huge.
Like a
Like
massive amount.
this guy's got a whole brain, but
He's got
no.
a whole
Like
brain.
yeah, like our modern computers can't even run off of 512
No,
megabytes of
no.
CPU.
But Johnny
Can't even
Five is
do it.
alive now. He's
Yeah,
alive.
that's true.
Johnny Five is alive.
Is alive. Man, I loved that movie when I was a
Me
kid.
too.
Gosh.
I haven't watched it since then. I almost don't want to because if it's bad, I don't want to.
You know, I know it's a silly movie. I know,
yeah.
I mean, it's in the 80s, it's got Steve Guttenberg. It's,
Right.
it's a silly movie.
Silly.
It's
Yeah.
just silly. But what I think that goes in the bin of um ridiculous 80s movies that have a surprising amount of heart.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. Most
You know,
definitely.
I put it in the same category as like a Harry and the Hendersons,
Yeah. Oh, love that
where
movie. John
yeah,
Lithgow, man.
where it's
Love
like
that guy.
this is an absolutely ridiculous movie, but I'm crying.
I'm crying. It's so
I'm
good.
crying right now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that years we talked about 80s are so good with that. And
Yeah.
I think that's why my daughter has a huge affection for 80s movies, probably because a lot like you do with your kids, you show them these movies, they feel so connected to that. And I think they're just starved for it in today's movie making. It's just not there, you know.
Even in the most ridiculous 80s movies, well, I should say the ones that we're talking about, the ones
Yeah.
that that succeed in what
Yeah.
they're doing, they have a lot of heart to them because the moments where like the Harry and the Hendersons, that ending
Yeah.
where
Oh
he's
man.
saying about Harry, but
Yeah.
he's having to do it with tough
A
love.
lot of tough love. Yeah.
It's earned. That moment is earned. We've been leading up to it for 90 minutes,
That's right.
and the moment is earned. That's what's missing from most movies that just don't succeed because
Yeah.
they try to put these moments in, but they don't earn the moment. They don't
Totally
earn it.
agree. Totally agree. You hit that nail right on the head. And that heart is really what connects humans. It's like that thing you feel that wells up inside of you. And I think that's really well done in sci-fi when, like, especially with robotics, if you anthropomorphize the robot, you start to feel something for it and the environment. And it makes sense because we anthropomorphize almost everything in life, even if
Yeah.
it's like an inanimate object. You humans have this strange ability to love almost anything, even if it's not alive.
Yeah.
Like, in the sense, it's like it's we will take something and place value into it and create emotion for that. That's why I always think this, Simon. Humans have no clue what's coming when other humans create human-like androids that are indistinguishable from other people. You might say, "Well, I don't know. I won't. I would never fall in love with something like that." I'm like, "No, you will.
Yeah.
No,
You
you
will.
will. You fall
You
in love
will.
with your dog."
Yeah.
I mean, you love. I mean, people love literally inanimate objects. Some people love their car like it's a real person,
Yeah.
like literally.
I
Like,
mean, that's full circle back to the 80s. Like, how
yeah.
many movies in the 80s are about guys loving their
Guys
cars?
loving the cars, man. Giving it a name, calling it she,
Yeah.
giving it
Polishing it with a diaper, you know. I
Dyer's like,
mean,
oh, my baby. It's like, you will fall in love with an android in the future as
yeah.
a human. It's
I,
inevitable.
I I've tried to, and I want to preface this by saying that I have completely failed, but I have tried to rid myself of that involving inanimate objects.
Mm-hmm.
And it just goes back to the philosophy that it's all rock and roll. So I try to tell myself, okay, what would happen if somebody stole these guitars back here or
Right,
whatever?
right.
I mean, I have a real connection with some of these guitars, not because of that they are a guitar or anything, but it's because of the creativity that they allow me to express.
Yeah.
And so, all right, well, let's say they were stolen or the house burnt down. I lost them all. Okay, just go get another guitar. It's fine.
Yeah.
They were just guitars. Who cares? I don't care. I mean,
Yeah.
what's special about it? Oh, I used that guitar on that song and that was a really great song or whatever. It's like, who cares? I could have done it with any other guitar.
That's true.
Honestly, I mean,
Yeah.
that's to say that the object through which I'm creating or the tool I'm using to create is so important to the creation that I couldn't have
Yeah.
created without it is to diminish my own ability to create.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, tools are important. I'm not going to diminish tools, but if I lost that tool, I just go get another tool, or you
Yeah.
build another tool, or you create, I mean, it's just there's nothing special. There's nothing
Yeah.
special about it.
It's so interesting though how people create superstition out of tools and
Yeah,
give meaning to a tool or an inanimate thing, that
yeah.
it is the reason
Yeah,
that
the
the
cliche
success.
of the athlete who doesn't wash their jersey
Yeah,
or something
yeah.
like that,
Yeah,
it's just like,
yeah.
"No, that's
I
not
have to
helping,
use
man.
this
It's you,
bat.
you just
Only this
yeah,
bat.
yeah,
Like,
exactly." It's like, are you an athlete or are you just, connected to this one bat or whatever? I don't know. That'd be
whatever it
weird. It'd be
is.
like it'd be like LeBron James saying, "This is the only ball we can play with," you
Yeah,
know?
like, this is very special to me.
Yeah.
Like,
I want to grab something. One second.
yeah, yeah, go for it, man. This is an intermission right now. Actually, I was thinking about Simon's guitars when he was saying, when we were talking about that intermission. I was actually thinking about that. I
I
was saying,
couldn't.
I was thinking about your guitars when I was looking
Okay.
back about
All
that.
right.
Yeah.
So I wanted to hold this one up real quick because this is a one of a kind guitar.
Hmm.
Ta-da.
Beautiful.
It's a beautiful,
It's
beautiful
beautiful.
guitar. It's one of a kind because it was a prototype guitar. They ended up changing the headstock on the production run of the guitar so that the tuners are 6 in a row instead of 3
Hmm.
on each side of the headstock. It has this trim system on it that the guy who used to make these trims, he retired, so they don't make them anymore.
Yeah.
I put in different pickups. This is a custom made pick guard that a friend of mine made for me because the original was black and I wanted to add something
Right.
to it, So anyway, all in all, this is a one of a kind guitar. Nobody on the planet owns a guitar like this. The first week I was in possession of this guitar, and you won't be able to see it because of the resolution of the camera and everything. One of my children, and this is, gosh, how long ago is this? This has got to be going like 14 years ago or something like that, close to that.
Yeah.
12, 14 years ago. The first week I have it, it's on a stand, and one of my kids knocks it over, and it just goes crashing into it. The drum kit.
Yeah.
Luckily, it's a well-built guitar. It's totally fine, but it's got paint chips and stuff like that from crashing literally into a crash cymbal. And when I sat there and watched it happen, it was like in slow motion, right? My one of a kind, only one of a kind guitar. And I sat there and watched this thing happen. And then I picked it up and I looked at the paint chips and thought, now it's even more one of a kind.
There you go.
I
Right?
mean, what can you do?
You can't do anything.
But that was another one of those moments that helped me. It's so funny. It's like our kids teach us through the chaos that they create.
Yes.
How to focus on what matters.
Yeah.
What mattered in that moment was not that my guitar got damaged. What mattered in that moment was my response.
Yeah.
To my guitar getting damaged.
Right.
Did I care about the guitar getting damaged more than I care about my own children?
Yeah.
And how they would feel if I get angry and all these kinds of things, and especially if I'm too angry about it. It's okay to demonstrate anger and disappointment and all those things to our children. It's necessary. It's good. But if I were to demonstrate that I cared more about the guitar than them,
right
now I've really lost view of what's important in life. So anyway, that was just my little example of how I've in my own life have been working toward trying to not care about inanimate objects and keep my eye on what's important in life.
That's right. There's no cars that Simon is like, oh baby, it's a Simonette.
There's two things in life I hate spending money on, and those are cars and computers.
Cars, the two C's. Huh?
Yeah. Oh, the C words.
C words, damn it.
I hate having to update computers. It's one of the biggest headaches, and especially but it's so important to my own creativity and sound, photography and videography. I have to be somewhat up to date on a lot of things.
Right.
And of course, in this day and age, we got to keep our computers up to date just for security and not being hacked and all these kinds of things. But I tell you, man, I just updated this machine and I updated some of the different software and stuff on it. Ever since then, I've just been trying to figure out bugs and, just it's crashing randomly. Certain programs are crashing randomly. Where it's just, I'm just like, oh my gosh, updates are supposed to make it better, not worse.
Yeah. But... That's what's actually amazing about movies when they forecast AI being so intelligent, so thoughtful, and all this stuff. I'm like, how could that even be close to our future? I mean, we can't even get computers to work well half the time. I'm like, it's you do an update, it's like, well, the internet, the Wi-Fi doesn't work anymore on this way. It was like, I just think I think we yearn for a future, especially a lot of creators of technology, where it's, oh, this is amazing how far we've come. But I think we're always bad at predicting the future. We're so bad at it. I mean, didn't everybody think when we were growing up, gonna be flying cars in the 2000s?
I know.
It's like 2000 are gonna be the Jetsons. It's like, can you imagine the nightmare that
hoverboards?
Oh yeah, it's like
self-drying clothing.
Oh, that would be kind of cool.
It would be. I mean, I'm just saying.
Cool stuff, but it never arrives. There's never an arrival at the time you think. It's like a construction
No,
project.
no,
The contractor tells you it's going to be done in 6 months. Plan for a year, man. It's not going to be 6 months. It's like nothing ever
no.
comes to fruition in the timing you think it's going to come for that.
That's why I
And
always roll my eyes whenever anybody talks about the second coming and, the
I
end is nigh and
know.
all this shit. I'm like,
How
you
do
know
they
what?
know?
Jesus thought the end, that he literally, if you, a lot of people don't read the Bible, they just think they know it. If you actually read the Bible, Jesus thought he's coming back in like a week. I mean, he honestly did. The Apostle Paul, and let's face it, most Protestant churches, they base their entire theology on Paul.
Yeah.
They don't care about James. They hardly care about the Gospels. And I
Yeah.
know that sounds really harsh, but I'm just telling you right now, go break down the preaching that's done at most um, Protestant
Yeah.
churches, and they follow Paul. They don't actually follow
Yeah.
Jesus. They follow Paul. So, but Paul literally thought that he would not die, that he
Yeah.
would live to see the resurrection, and in his own words, they'd be changed in the twinkling of an eye. He thought he's going to be one of those people who gets changed in the twinkling of an eye
Yeah.
from this mortal state to immortal. Yeah, so all those guys were wrong. 2,000 years later, no
Yeah.
second coming. So how
Yeah.
about everybody just stop talking about how we're in the end times?
I
Sorry.
know.
I mean,
You
just
just
stop.
don't know. I mean, just come on.
Just shut up about it.
Yeah. Just
That's what I say. I just like, just shut up.
yeah.
You don't know what the hell you're talking about.
At
Jesus
all.
didn't even know either. I mean, to Jesus's credit, he actually said, "No one knows but the Father." He
Right.
said,
That's
"I
right.
don't even know. Only the
Yeah.
Father knows." But he was working under the assumption that his second coming would be very soon after his
Yeah.
death and resurrection. And yeah, well,
Yeah. I mean,
even Jesus was at minimum 2,000 years off.
at minimum.
Even if he came back today, right now, as I'm speaking, he was about 2,000 years off of his
At
original
minimum.
prediction. Yeah.
Yeah, which is why, saying this is going to happen in this year and the singularity is going to occur. It's like, you don't know. 2029, isn't that like pretty soon? I'm like,
Yeah.
didn't even get a working
You know.
prototype of a mother robot. It's like,
Yeah, we should be caring about. We should be caring about that our grandchildren have clean air, clean water, and clean
yeah,
food. That's what
right.
we should be
I
caring about
totally agree. I totally agree.
because those things are actual concerns.
Yes. Yes. And it
You
was actually
know,
funny you mentioned like, oh, these church that doesn't follow Jesus, they follow Paul. I'm like, I'd actually surmise that a lot of churches don't follow Jesus. Sorry, it's a bold take. But if you look at all the tremendous thousands and thousands of sects of Christianity, I mean, take for an instance, like there's a great documentary out called Let Us Pray, but spelled Prey, and it's about the IFB Church, Individual Fundamentalist Baptists. The rabid
okay,
Baptists have returned,
yeah,
and David Hiles, whoever created this, as he thought it was not conservative enough that it was not
I've
conservative.
never been to a Baptist church that wasn't conservative enough.
Right, and this guy thought
I've only
this
been
is
too
not
conservative.
conservative enough. And it's just very sad, actually. The whole, and they're everywhere. They're all over the United States, but it's essentially like a super over the top. It's like Old Testament on steroids type of, we need to interpret this exactly as you think it is type of thing. They are not following Jesus. No way.
No,
I mean, that's
no,
just
no.
one example of a lot of
Yeah.
churches. There's not a lot of places that are actually following the teachings of Jesus. Because if it was, it would just be way nicer. I mean, like,
Be a lot more smiling and
yeah,
hugging.
it's like,
I mean, there would be a lot more accepting of people with
yeah,
different ideas and
yeah.
and things like that.
And the guy filled up wine in a barrel. That's pretty good for me, man. I mean, pretty incredible.
To anyone's credit, I will give this caveat that it's incredibly difficult to really follow Jesus because, to our point we were making earlier, Jesus was very complex.
Yes. Totally agree.
He taught some very simple ways to live life, but those, if you take those simple teachings to their logical conclusion, very complex in how they actually pan out and how they affect our own lives as somebody who
Yes.
is trying to follow those
Yes.
teachings. Extremely complex, not always for the betterment of, at least immediately, for the
Yes.
betterment of
Totally agree.
ourselves or those around us, and to me, that's when I think, oh, we might be onto something here. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's why I love Buddhism so much.
Yeah.
Buddhism embraces complexity.
Yeah.
It really does, and it tries to once again simplify things so that we have concepts that we can grasp onto.
Sure.
But when we talk about the consequences of actually following Buddhist or Christian precepts, we're talking about an extremely complex way of life, changing of life. If I were to really follow Jesus, I would sell everything I have,
That's
give it to the
true.
poor.
Right.
Every single thing I have.
Yeah.
I'd sell it all, give all that money to the poor, and I would be a homeless disciple of Jesus. That is actually following Jesus.
Right. Because they
So
just
I'm here
dropped
to tell you right
everything,
now,
the
I
disciples.
don't do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I don't do that either. I'm not just
I don't do
dropping
it.
everything.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like, come with me. No, now.
Yeah.
We're done here.
Yeah. I mean, that was kind of the expectation that Jesus gave people. However, he said that, but at the same time, he, he you know he, he hung out with the sinners, and I mean, these
Yeah,
are
of
very
course.
simplistic terms and
Yeah,
stuff like
tax
that.
collectors, all that. Yeah.
And he didn't go around telling everybody they had to do that. Here's
That's
we've mentioned
right.
this before. We've mentioned this before, that so many of Jesus's really extreme kind of teachings are in private to a
That's exactly
singular
right.
person. But when he's talking to crowds and stuff like that, he does no, there's none of this. You have to sell everything
That's
and
true.
give it all to the poor. No,
Yeah.
you just have to be a good person who's
Yeah.
helpful and kind and who is willing to go out of your way for somebody in need. It doesn't require everything of you, but it does require something of you.
That's the complexity you mentioned earlier. I think this is what I feel like I'm tracking with it. Like you were saying about the snake, and some people may say that's evil. So I think God just wants complexity. And I think Jesus taught the complexity, because if it was not that, it would be a rally and
Yeah.
hey, those damn Democrats are bad. like,
Yeah.
these bastards. like,
Yeah.
but he understood, like, okay, you know what? This person, I'm going to ask of this. This group, I'm going to say this type of thing. In a sense, there's complexity in that. It's not like, all right, everybody has to cut their hair, man.
Yeah.
It's like only this dress.
When it came to the details that didn't matter, Jesus doesn't talk about any of them.
No, not at all.
He doesn't talk about the clothes you wear. He doesn't talk about he doesn't talk about fashion
No. You
at
never heard
all.
fashion Jesus?
No.
What would Jesus wear?
Yeah.
Honestly, not a lot, probably.
No. He doesn't tell women that they can't wear makeup or
Yeah.
jewelry or anything like that. These are all Pauline things, and that
That's
that
exactly
goes back
right.
to our point where we're
Yes.
saying these Christians are following Paul, and you can make the argument Paul is saying he's getting his stuff directly from Jesus. I'm going to say no.
I say no also. That's a no. You made that up yourself.
I'm going to say that Paul has made up most of the things that we have in his epistles and things like that. That he's just made it up,
Yeah, of
and
course.
they don't have any strong correlation to the four Gospels.
Oh,
Jesus or Paul, I think he quotes Jesus maybe twice,
Yeah.
like paraphrases Jesus,
Yeah, exactly.
Peter's the leader of the church, but Paul is trying to usurp him.
Yeah.
And, they have disagreements and falling outs and things like that. And for the most part, most people just don't get along with Paul.
Yeah. Of
They
course.
just
Yeah.
don't. He
This is a
doesn't
human
prove to be
life.
the most likable fellow. It sounds like I'm talking shit about Paul, and I'm
No,
actually
it's just
not. I
no.
actually think Paul was, I mean, for all intents and purposes, Paul extremely important to Christianity, to the promotion and the,
Yeah,
and the individual listeners with their own beliefs can decide whether that's a
sure.
good or a bad thing or what. But if you're just talking about Paul as a Christian missionary, he's extremely successful and he does a great job, but he does so probably not promoting a lot of the things that Jesus actually said or did or taught,
Yeah. Yeah.
but just Paul's own spin on it all. And
Yeah.
that's fine until the moment you say that the Bible's inerrant and
Yeah.
everything that
Yeah.
Paul says is, the whatever you want to call it, the gospel truth or
Sure.
whatever.
Yeah.
It's just like, well, I mean, if you want to say that an extreme zealot who was probably half crazy, I mean,
Right. Of
honestly,
course. Yeah. No.
honestly, and I'm
Yeah.
not saying that to be derogative. I just think that Paul was that kind of a zealot that if you were to meet him today, he'd have
Yeah.
very few followers.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Of course. A little nutty, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Most of the people who were following Paul's teachings probably wouldn't like Paul if they met him.
Yeah.
I'm making some big assumptions here,
But let's
but
be honest, though, man. A lot of people, if Jesus was around in the flesh, a lot of people wouldn't like him either.
yeah,
I mean, it's true.
yeah.
Like,
But I
but
think,
be nice to people.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
man.
I think the difference is that Jesus, he's almost anti-dogma,
You know what? That's a good point. I didn't think
and,
about
and
it that way.
Paul is
Hmm.
all about creating a dogma. You know,
That's very profound, actually. I don't think I ever thought about it that way. Hmm. Yeah.
I
That
mean,
sounds weird to say, though. Like,
yeah,
like yeah,
but if Jesus was so dogmatic, then he wouldn't leave a lot of room for complexity.
that's true. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. It would be cut and dry on a lot of
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
There wouldn't be, yeah, there wouldn't be a lot of mystery to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the fact that we have, probably 1,000,000,001 different Christian sects,
Yeah.
who all have a different spin on who Jesus was and
Right.
is and taught and
And
means.
believe it wholeheartedly. Like,
Yeah,
there's no backing down.
yeah.
Yeah.
That speaks to the complexity and the anti-dogma, way in which Jesus taught. So I told you I've been writing this thing about the
Yeah.
Bishop Canty or whatever. Anyway, I was
Yes.
just so I've been working on this script, and once I get to the editing process, I'll see what goes in and what doesn't. But some of the conversation I was just writing about recently was kind of about this idea about how Jesus, he seems to be trying to free the religion from its constraints. And we see that symbolically play out with the renting of the temple
Yeah.
shroud or whatever. Sorry, words are sometimes tricky for me. But that is symbolic of God being freed from the constraints and the prison, basically, that was the temple.
Yeah.
And now symbolically, he's now God's for everyone, and you don't need to go through the high priest and
That's right.
in
That's
there
right.
and everything. So what happens almost immediately after, we get people like Paul who call themselves teachers, even though Jesus himself said, "Don't call yourself a teacher."
Hmm.
Uh, but they take upon themselves the mantle of rabbi and leader of the church that they are creating, because Jesus didn't create it, so now they're creating the church. And then they create this new prison for God, and that is the written word.
Yeah.
So God is freed from his prison of the temple and immediately is put inside a new prison, which is the inerrant Bible. The ludicrousy of that, when you go back and you actually listen or read what Jesus is really saying, is just baffling.
It is baffling.
It's just baffling that anyone would think that Jesus, I mean, just read the Gospels and find a place in which Jesus is ever even hinting at that there will be a book that will tell us everything we need to know, and that we should never, think or do anything that would be contrary or outside
Right.
of said book or collection of books, as the case is. I mean, that's a preposterous thing to think if you actually read what Jesus
Yeah.
teaches.
Which is in many ways, like you said, I've always read it this way, is it is a freeing. I never thought about like anti-dogmatic, but it's like, okay, hold on here, guys. Hold on. I have something to tell you. We're gonna change this. We're gonna free you from the tightness, from the rigidity, from what you have been thinking about this. And we're gonna simplify but make it complex. That's always how what I was like, oh, I get it now. I get this. I get this. This is
Don't
why you're here. Yeah.
don't misconstrue this with any kind of Nazism or anything like
No.
that. But what I want to say is that if Jesus were here, so originally we had the renting of the temple shroud or veil. Today, maybe that would come in the form of the burning of the Bible, just like the
Yeah.
destruction of the Bible itself, and
Yeah.
saying, I'm freeing God from the constraints
Yeah.
that you've put on him by trying to say that he can only be found in this book.
Yeah.
It seems completely anti what Jesus was
It
trying to
does,
teach
doesn't
us.
it? I mean, it's like if you really dive in and see, you're like, oh, that's just always what I thought about. I was like, oh, this is the purpose. But then, like, and any church, most of the churches I've been to, or people are talking, I'm like, wait a minute, wait a minute. How could like, it's like there's this real big issue with disagreeing with it. You just can't disagree. I'm like, of course I can. Like, a
Yeah.
lot of people aren't given that freedom and how they're taught about it. It's like, no, you have to stay in this lane. And so in this lane, this means that you will not allow these, and then you start excluding people because of it. You start excluding other ideas and other religions or practices. And so, nope. And it's like, wait, there's other good thoughts to have here. Like there are other good thoughts here.
This idea of the Bible being the inerrant word of God is so ingrained in the
Yes.
psyche of especially the Protestant Christian,
Yes. Yes.
that whenever I show that Paul was wrong about something, and I don't show it outside the Bible,
Yeah.
I show it inside.
Right.
And I'm very careful about that. I'm like, no, I'm not, I'm not telling you that Paul's wrong because of anything written outside of
Sure.
the scripture. But I can show you how Paul was wrong just by referencing the Bible itself. And it's very, it's not tricky. It's
Right.
not mysterious. It's not like, oh, but this. No, it's actually just he was very clearly wrong about such thing. But I say that to say you should see the fear
Yeah.
in people's eyes when I show them the concern that they have. And I'm just like, no, Paul was just a guy.
It's just a guy. Exactly. You know, you made it too simple. You made it too simple.
But he's just a
He's a
guy. He's
human.
right about some things. He's wrong about some
Yeah.
things. He's a man of his time. I mean, he makes some claims that are so outlandish that they can only be believed by a very primitive mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
2,000 years later, you just can't in good conscience believe what Paul is selling. You just
Yeah.
can't buy it. You know, I mean, he's just saying things that are just objectively false. Objectively, they're
Of
not up.
course.
They're
It's
not
not up for
really up
debate.
for debate.
No.
You know,
No.
and you see within the Bible itself, and we don't have to go to the Old Testament. We can stay right there in the New Testament, and we see that James, which is a great epistle, probably the best epistle in the entire New Testament. That's just my opinion. Other people can
Yeah.
have their own
I actually
favorites and
love
stuff.
James. Yeah. Yeah.
But if you're talking about an epistle that actually lines up with the teachings of Jesus, go to the epistle of James.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a coincidence that the epistle of James reads like a response to Paul. It's like, actually, Paul's wrong. And if James is written by the James who was the literal brother of Jesus, that's up for debate. That's not
Sure.
that, you know. But if that's true, then the epistle of James is being dictated or written by somebody who walked and talked with Jesus himself during his own lifetime, was there to hear the actual teachings of Jesus, a much more trustworthy source
Yes.
than Paul.
Yes. And you think just how convoluted things have gotten where you have so many different versions of Christianity where like I'm watching this one thing and it's like the guy literally just says, I will never get my theology from a woman. I'm like,
Yeah.
that shit's made up. Like you literally just made that shit up. Like,
Paul, this is a fun fact. Paul worked with women.
yeah.
There were female deacons, deaconesses, you
Yeah.
know. I don't know how much they were allowed to teach or
Sure.
preach or anything like that. But they at least had assignments such as carrying the epistle to the Romans, to actually carry it to Rome and
Yeah.
present it there. That was a woman who's given this responsibility, extremely important responsibility. So, you know, at the very minimum, we have that. And for Paul to say that, by the way,
Yeah.
is also once again contradictory to Jesus. I've made this point in our conversations
Yeah.
before, but the first apostle of the resurrected Jesus is Mary.
No, most definitely.
She is the one who's sent to spread the good word that Jesus is written or risen, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Not a man, a woman.
Exactly.
So for Paul to say that is completely contrary to what Jesus has done.
Yeah. It's just because I know people are not going to like to hear this who are like staunchly against what we're saying, but I'm going to reiterate what you said and I'm going to double down it. It's just because they're just guys.
Yeah.
Like they're just dudes, like they're very flawed people. Like
Yeah.
they're
That
not,
doesn't make them bad people.
doesn't make them bad. No.
I want to emphasize that. I'm not calling Paul a bad person.
No. But they're going to make mistakes. It's just like it is they're human beings. It's like
Yeah.
and they say weird shit, man. Like,
And if after 2,000 years we are not better than Paul, then
yeah.
we've been doing something wrong.
Right.
How disappointing would it be for Jesus to come down and be like, "What? You still haven't got past that yet?"
They're like, why are we worked up about this woman deacon pastor thing? Are you serious? Are we doing this? Like,
Please, nobody feel like I'm speaking derogatory about the mentally handicapped, or however, whatever terminology you're comfortable
Sure.
with.
Sure.
I'm not trying to be disrespectful to a mentally challenged individual.
Sure.
But I just want to make the point that when somebody is mentally challenged, oftentimes they can't, we'll compare their ability to think and reason to a certain age. Maybe they haven't progressed past what we
Yeah.
would consider like a toddler, or somebody like, maybe a 3 or 4 year old or something like that. Well, that Christianity is in that way mentally
Right.
challenged and handicapped,
Right.
because
Severely underdeveloped. Right.
yeah, exactly. Because, we're still stuck sucking our thumb, this is going to sound really bad. We're still sucking Paul's tit. But I think that's the best way I can say it.
Yeah.
And we need to get off that. We need to get off Paul and progress.
I actually think on some level that's going to happen. Follow me here on this. I think like the pretty precipitous drop in church membership and decrease in many ways Christianity in America is a semi reset that's coming. I don't know what it's going to lead to, but I think it may. My guess would be, this will be well beyond my lifetime, is that it will be much more of a anti-dogmatic situation, and that it'll be very tight, and like, as my wife would say, the rabid Baptists will keep very tight in their conventions, and there'll be these very tight, almost double down
Yeah.
conservative nature of that. But on a larger
Yes.
scale, I think it would be more like, okay, more spiritual, more
Yeah.
teachings of Jesus, but you're going to have pockets of just like hate and ultra conservative. Those will stay, I think.
Oh, yeah. And the more open the majority of people
Yeah.
become, the more radical
Yes.
the response will be.
Yes. Yes. That's America in general. I think the more we push towards being open-minded and caring about people who look different than us, identify different than us, there
Yeah.
will be more radicalism because of that, in a sense. But it will not be a linear progression with that. But it will definitely create nasty responses from a group of people.
Whether or not these politicians are sincere, I can't tell you, because
Sure. I mean, how would you
politicians,
know? I mean, how would you even know?
they say a lot of stuff. But I can count offhand at least 6 or 8 conservative politicians who openly, verbally embrace Christian nationalism and
Right.
no longer want a separation of church and state.
Correct.
The funny thing about that is, it's like, but what church are you talking about?
Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
talking about the Westboro Baptist Church? Like, should they be running government?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Are you talking about Presbyterians, Catholics? I
Sure.
mean,
Yeah.
what church
What
exactly are you
church?
talking about?
Yeah.
Because I hear these politicians say, "I'm sick of this, separation of church and state, and
Yeah.
the state shouldn't be leading the church; church should be leading the state." That's the claim that they're making, and I'm just
Sure.
like, "What church?"
Yeah. No, their church, the one they're at.
Yeah,
That's what it is. Like, that's the answer. Like,
I'm assuming they don't mean the Mormons. I'm assuming they
no,
don't mean the
there's no
Seventh Day
way.
Adventists. I'm assuming they don't mean,
No.
what are they called? The Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm assuming they don't mean the Buddhists or the Muslims, or I'm assuming they don't mean any of
No,
those.
it's the
So
fundamentalists.
yeah,
Like,
just just fundamentalist Christian. Yeah,
yeah, fundamentalist evangelicals. That's the church they're talking about. Just have the balls to say it. So
yeah.
whatever you want to say, the guts, whatever terminology. Maybe balls isn't the best way to say it anymore. But you just have the gumption to just come out there and say it, and then I could push you. I'll give you the hand to the side and go, please stop talking. I mean, like,
So is America still like 70% Christian? It's like 60 or
yeah, it's in the
70%.
60s, I think, at this point. Yeah.
60s, okay, but that
It's
number's
going down.
diminishing. It's
Yeah.
diminishing. It's diminishing.
Yeah.
So at some point in the the percentage of
Yeah.
Christians, when Christians become a minority in the
Yeah.
negotiation, then they'll be like, we need a separation of church and state.
We're gonna need that right now.
Yeah.
Like, they're gonna
I
need that.
mean,
Yeah.
go live in an Islamic nation and ask yourself if you want
Do you want
separation of
that?
church and
Yeah.
state. You
You
know,
see what's going on with the Taliban over there in Afghanistan? You want that? Is that
I
what you
mean,
want?
look what's going on with Hamas and Israel.
Exactly.
You know, when you allow your religious convictions to guide your politics, and anybody who wants this podcast to remain PG, cover your ears.
Yeah.
That's fucked up.
That is completely.
You're ready for some fucked up shit.
I agree.
And look no further than what's happening with Israel and the Gaza Strip to see how fucked up the world is when you allow your religion to guide your politics.
Right. Exactly. It's not like it's an agreed upon religion either. It's like a bunch of different stuff. And that is often, and it is often whatever religious pathway that is leading a state or a country, it's actually never like fairly democratic. I mean, it's always like hammer down to the fist. You can't wear this, you can't do this. It's very punitive. It's not like it's like, oh, it's all love. It's great. Yeah. It's never that. Why is it always like the raging psychos? Like,
I don't have an anti-Semitic bone in my body, but I am completely anti-Zionism.
Yeah.
100% anti-Zionism. I don't think Israel has any right to be where they are right now. I don't think, Israel as a nation, the way that they were set up, anyway, it's caused nothing but terrible problems. And I'm not wishing any ill for the Jewish people. I'm just not. I'm just saying the way that that's gone down.
Yeah. That's what you're saying. Yeah.
Is horrific. And I am completely against the way that the recognition of the state of Israel and the way that they were able to go in there and oppress the Palestinians there and things like that. I'm 100% against it. I'm not pro Hamas either.
Of course not.
I am not pro violence and of any kind in any way. But the fact that the United States and other Western nations around the world continue to take Israel's side instead of Palestine's side, it all boils down to that Bible.
Yeah.
And if you got rid of it, very few people would be left on Israel's side.
Man, Simon, the take master. Well, I'll tell you something. You never caused me any problems, Simon. It's been a very joyful experience that I'm always excited that continues. So I have a lot of gratitude for our relationship. And that's definitely one thing Jesus is all about, man. Gratitude, caring for people, being there for others. You've been there for me. And you've been a great person to knock around some pretty interesting ideas.
This podcast is a percolator, of ideas. We're just like we're starting with something and we're roasting it, and then we're seeing what comes out the other side.
Like Simon's bread. He sent me a picture of his bread he's made. It's pretty amazing.
That's right. We're working on it.
I mean, that bread looks good. I'm a big bread guy, man. So I was like, man, I need that bread.
Oh yeah. I saw somebody at the gym today, and I've been trimming down, and they were saying, "Man, you're looking, well, thanks." And they were just saying, "Yeah, you're looking good." And I was saying, I've been doing it, eating bread every day.
Damn right.
And I was saying that for their benefit.
That's exactly right.
I could see that they were wanting to like, how do you do it? Yeah. It's like, you don't have to go extreme, and this.
I know this, of course.
Just kick out all the extreme ideas that anybody's throwing at you. Find a well-balanced life.
Isn't that life in general? Kick out all the extreme ideas in life.
Anytime somebody comes at you with some extreme idea, just kick it out.
Just kick it out. Yeah,
it doesn't matter if it's Paul or if it's some new TikTok nutritionist or whoever it is.
Just kick it out.
Kick it out.
Just kick it out. As much just do that.
Well, and that's what you and I, we have some hot takes and
Yeah.
we appreciate it. And
That's
that's
right.
the thing. It's like you and I might be wrong about some of the
Sure.
things that we say on this show. Totally fine. I'm wrong all the time, and I learn I'm wrong, and
Of
I do
course.
better.
Of course.
And I change constantly. My ideas change, and
Yep.
if that weren't the case, I'd still be saying Paul is,
Sure.
is
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah. Kick
As
out
I
those
did when
extreme
I was
ideas,
young.
people.
Yeah.
Like,
but I just wanted to return that gratitude to you, where it's like, man, and I know we talk about this a lot, but we can never express gratitude enough. And the gratitude I have to be able to come on your show
Mhm.
and just be able to give all my little hot takes,
Love it, man.
and you love it, you appreciate it, you reciprocate, and we're able to have an intelligent conversation. Once in a while we disagree on something, and once in a while
Sure.
we,
It's all
whatever,
good.
and we respect the other person's ability to um, make mature and well thought out
Yeah.
observations of things,
Most
and
definitely.
we should all be able to do that. We should
Yes.
just all be, and I think
Yes.
Jesus is a great example of that. And I think if people go back and read your gospels
Mhm.
and look for that in Jesus, look for
Yes.
his
Yes.
ability to disagree without condemning.
Well said. Very well said. Simon, always a pleasure, man. We will be
Thanks, you
back
too.
again as usual. Thanks, Simon.
All right, see you soon.